Well, looks like we're recording, so go ahead and tell me.
So, I'm going to be teaching a multicultural education class, and my students are teachers who are going to be entering the classroom, and most of their background is, pretty homogenous, and they're not really familiar with students from other cultures. And so, if I could invite guest speakers, if I had contacts in Indiana, I would have them come into the classroom and talk to us. But since I don't, I thought I would interview people here.
Okay.
So I'm interested in you and your background and school experience. And actually, I was talking with Lilia. She had some good stuff for me too. But
Oh, good.
So, were you born here or were you?
Yeah, I was born here in the States. My parents were illegals back in the 50s. So they came to the country as illegal aliens, but their intention was always to be in the country legally. I don't know if they understood the language of assimilation, though my mother certainly spoke it or practiced it, especially in the 60s when she spoke about, you have nothing to be embarrassed about as being a Mexican, but we're not living in Mexico, we're living in America. And so when the Brown Beret movement and the Chicano movement was kind of a big deal back in the 60s and 70s, she just never understood why people would want to hang on to something that essentially they left by leaving the country. So I was born here, American citizen, born and raised. But as Lily and I have often spoke, we feel as being a bridge or transition between two cultures. We're not completely Hispanic, but we're not completely white America. And there it is.
Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, because I was raised by two individuals who the majority of their adult life was spent in Mexico. The cultures, the smell, the digest, the thoughts, the patterns, the rhythms of the Mexican culture, Hispanic culture in general, but specifically Mexican culture, which has, I think, because of its maybe Roman Catholic social Roman Catholic national consciousness, the effect that it has on the consciousness about respect for authority, maybe even a kind of a fatalistic worldview. So they were raised in that. And unlike America, there wasn't a whole lot of, it wasn't like a caste system in India, which is part of India's national consciousness. It was pretty close to it, where, you're born into a certain category or class of life, and that's what you are, period. Education certainly makes a difference. But coming to America, the opportunities are much more vast. And so it's cliche to say this, but yes, America is the land of opportunity. If someone's willing to work and stay focused and they commit to a goal, they can break through a lot of socioeconomic barriers. And my mom and dad had a life that they could never have imagined in Mexico, from owning property to, being able to generate a certain level of wealth, kind of thing. And so we were born to that. So we were born to people who knew what the old world was and raising kids in the new world. They exposed us to Mexican culture, like the ballet folklorico. Music, we were raised Roman Catholic, so and most of our friends were obviously Hispanic as well. But my parents, partly because I think they saw people as more the same than they saw differences. My parents had a lot of different types of friends, from ethnic to even lifestyle. So a lot of maybe the gay friends my father had were his friends. They were just different. Not different bad, just different. And so, though as a parent, I realize you try to teach your kids one thing or the other, but they end up catching your attitudes. Anyways. And so I saw my father as being accepting, without reaction or judgment about anybody. Most of his reaction or judgment was people who maybe didn't work, were lazy, or maybe difficult to manage, but not their morality. I don't think he would even phrase it that way. And then went to mass, Roman Catholic services. So that embedded still even further a hierarchy of categories of people who were some were better, some were different, that kind of thing. Better, when I mean different, I mean better. Some people were closer to God, some people were more put together. But as looking back at my father, I resemble him physically, but also by temperament. So now, having the language of strengths, I would see he's probably had woo and empathy and connectedness. He drew a lot of people to him. He loved being able to help somebody get out of their socioeconomic stratosphere and to move to another category. He often assisted men in getting jobs in the industry he was in to help them out. And most of those men were very loyal to my father as a result of that. And even succeeded further in generating wealth or acquiring property than my father did. But that was not a point of envy for my father, but a point of, wow, he really did well. And I don't think he would have even thought of himself as being instrumental in that. It was just so natural to him to be inclusive and to assist people that he just loved people. Anybody. My mother was the same way with friends. And even in regards to poverty, she was always used to mention that, being poor is no excuse for being dirty. So whether we had little or lot, it was always, being clean, doing the right thing was always important. Didn't matter, what our state in life was. Things like order, cleanliness, doing the right thing mattered.
Did you find that Americans or white America treated your family with the same kind of acceptance that your father treated other people?
No, people who want to shit all over America as being a racist country have not lived in other countries or not experienced other cultures. So when people are critical of America as being a very racist country, does America have horrible parts in our history? Yes. I mean, slavery has got to be the worst component of our lives, and then the civil rights movement and the resistance to that in our culture. But people have not experienced classism, racism in other countries, and they have no idea what they're talking about. So at least here in this country, we speak about the ideal that all men are created equal under God, and that we have a constitution and a law that if society doesn't encourage that or grant that, then the law will make sure that we have an even playing field. So, did I ever experience it? No, not that I remember. I remember seeing it a lot more in Mexico than I remember seeing it here, to be very frank with you, even in my own family. I recall one incident that really brought it into focus. My uncle Armando was the dean of the Institute of Technology in the University of Durango, Mexico. Durango is a state. And he was a little bit fairer-skinned and educated, and was a typical, Mexican intellectual of the 60s with the heavy black frames and the green-tinted glasses. Well, his sister Maria Cristina, was darker and a shop owner, small business owner. One day during the 80s, when I was visiting with my father, with my family in Mexico, my Aunt Maria made a comment about, I think I was asking the question about how often did we get together with your family, because all of us were together visiting. And she said, oh, I see Armando pretty often. In fact, I saw him the other day in the street, but of course I couldn't say hello to him. And she mentioned something in Spanish I didn't quite understand. So when I asked my father, I said, what did she mean? She said, oh, they were out in public, so she couldn't speak to him. So I'm thinking, was it a noise issue? Was it a distance issue? She says, well, no. He's the dean of the Institute of Technology. She owns a shop. And so there, I began to see how even classism, and in a sense almost maybe racism, was operating in my own family. And it was accepted, and it was normal. That was a given.